He bought the Massey Ferguson everyone laughed at. Then every Case IH owner in the county wanted one too. There are purchases that make you the joke at the coffee shop. Purchases that make grown men shake their heads when you drive past. Purchases that turn your name into a punchline every time equipment comes up in conversation. In September 2020, Dale Hutchins made one of those purchases. He bought a 2012 Massey Ferguson 8690 at a farm dispersal auction in southern Illinois for $87,000. 8 years old, 2,847 hours on the meter. DynaVT continuously variable transmission, 370 horsepower from an 8.4-liter Sisu diesel engine. Red paint in Case IH country. The auction crowd barely looked at it. When the auctioneer called for bids, the silence lasted almost 10 seconds. Finally, Dale raised his card. One bid. Then another farmer countered half-heartedly. Dale raised again. The other guy dropped out. Sold. $87,000 for a tractor that had a book value of $164,000. Dale drove it home on a lowboy that afternoon, and by the time he unloaded it in his machine yard, 3 neighbors had already driven past slowly enough to get a good look. By Sunday, half the county knew. Dale Hutchins, a man who'd farmed the same 1,800 acres for 42 years, had bought a Massey Ferguson. And people had opinions. Southern Illinois is Case IH territory, has been since International Harvester planted roots in the region back in the 1960s. The red equipment you see in those fields isn't Massey Ferguson red, it's Case IH red. Magnum tractors, Steiger 4-wheel drives, axial flow combines. If you farm in Randolph County and you don't run Case IH, you're the outlier, and outliers get noticed. Dale had run Case IH his entire career, a MX-255 he'd bought in 2004. A MX-285 he'd picked up used in 2011. Solid machines, reliable, known. The kind of iron that didn't surprise you in the field, good or bad. But Dale had been watching the used equipment market for 2 years, and he'd noticed something. Case IH tractors were holding value too well. A 10-year-old Magnum 290 with 4,000 hours, still selling for $120,000. A 12-year-old MX 285, still pulling $95,000 at auction. Good for resale, bad for buying. Dale wasn't looking to make a statement. He wasn't looking to prove a point. He was 71 years old. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just needed a tractor that could handle 1,800 acres of corn and soybeans without costing him $150,000. And when that Massey Ferguson 8690 came across the auction block at less than half its book value, Dale did the math in his head. DynaVT transmission, same technology Fendt used in Europe. Sisu engine, Finnish built, known for fuel efficiency and durability, low hours, clean maintenance records. He raised his card. Now it was sitting in his yard, and the neighbors were talking. The first comment came Monday morning at the co-op. Dale was picking up a parts order when Billy Schaefer, a guy who ran 3,200 acres and 2 Case IH Magnum 340s, walked in. "Heard you bought that Massey at the Kroger auction." Dale nodded. "Yep." Billy smiled. Not friendly, amused. "What were you thinking?" Dale kept his tone even. "I was thinking I got a good deal." "On a Massey Ferguson?" "On a tractor that does what I need for half the price of anything else on the lot." Billy shook his head. "Good luck finding parts when that thing breaks." He walked out. That was the tone. Not hostile, just dismissive. The kind of comment that sounds like advice but feels like a prediction. And it didn't stop. At the grain elevator, Dale heard it again. At the feed store, at church. Everywhere he went, someone had something to say about the Massey Ferguson. "Didn't know they still made those. Hope you got a good warranty. You planning to keep that or flip it?" Nobody said it directly, but the message was clear. You made a mistake. Dale didn't argue. He just nodded, smiled, and went back to work, because he'd done his homework. The Massey Ferguson 8690 was built during a specific window, 2009 to 2013, when ATCO was integrating Fendt engineering into the Massey Ferguson high-horsepower line. The DynaVT transmission was the same CVT system Fendt had perfected. The cab layout was nearly identical to a Fendt 930. The hydraulics, the electronics, the rear hitch, all Fendt influence. Essentially, Dale had bought a Fendt for half the price. But nobody cared about engineering when the paint was the wrong color. October came, harvest started, and Dale pulled the Massey Ferguson 8690 into the field with a grain cart, running support for his Case IH 7120 combine. The tractor performed exactly like the spec sheet said it would. The Dyna VT transmission was smooth, no gear changes, no lurching, just seamless power delivery from 0 to 30 miles per hour. The Sisu engine pulled the loaded grain cart, 22 tons of corn, without strain. Fuel consumption was lower than his old MX285 by almost 12%, and the ride was better. The cab suspension on the 8690 used the same system as the Fendt 800 series, hydraulic dampening that absorbed field roughness without bouncing the operator. After 10 hours in the seat, Dale's back didn't hurt. That was new. But nobody asked about the ride quality. They asked about breakdowns. That Massey give you any trouble yet? How's that European tractor holding up? You keeping a mechanic on speed dial? Dale's answer was always the same, running fine. And it was. By mid-October, the Massey Ferguson had logged 178 hours without a single issue. Oil changes on schedule, filters clean, no warning lights, no hydraulic leaks, no transmission codes, it just worked. But while Dale's Massey Ferguson ran quietly through the fields, other tractors in the county started having problems. It started with Billy Schaffer's Magnum 340. 3 weeks into harvest, the tractor threw a transmission code in the middle of a 400-acre field. The dealer sent a tech out, diagnostic check, software update, cleared the code. 2 days later, it came back. This time the dealer pulled the tractor in, transmission teardown, clutch pack replacement, $14,000 in parts and labor. Billy was down for a week. Then it was Jim Hartman's Magnum 380. Overheating issue, coolant leak in the EGR system, required a full emissions system rebuild. 3 weeks down. Then Carl Benson's MX305 started losing hydraulic pressure, pump failure, another dealer trip, another week of downtime. By early November, half the Case IH tractors in Randolph County had been in the shop at least once, and Dale's Massey Ferguson kept running. People started noticing, not in a way they'd admit, but in the way they asked questions. How many hours you got on that Massey now? You do anything special to it, or just running it stock? What kind of fuel economy you seeing? Dale answered honestly. No bragging, no comparisons, just facts. Got about 320 hours on it now, running stock. Fuel consumption's running about 6.2 gallons per hour under load. The guys with Case IH Magnums were burning 7.8 to 8.4 gallons per hour doing the same work. That gap added up fast. The real turning point came in mid-November. A cold front moved through southern Illinois, dropping temperatures into the low 20s overnight. The ground froze. Fields that had been soft turned rock hard. And moisture levels in the corn dropped fast. It was a perfect window to finish harvest. But it was also brutal on equipment. Cold starts, frozen hydraulics, engines struggling to turn over, DEF systems gelling up in tractors with emissions equipment. Dale's Massey Ferguson 8690, built in 2012, before Tier 4 final emission standards, didn't have DEF. It started cold every morning without hesitation. Billy Schaefer's 2018 Magnum 340 wouldn't start. The DEF system had gelled overnight. The tractor went into limp mode, wouldn't come out until the system thawed, which required moving the tractor into a heated shop. Billy lost a day and a half. Jim Hartman had the same problem. His 2019 Magnum 380 gelled up 3 mornings in a row. Carl Benson gave up trying to start his MX340 in the field and just left it parked until the weather warmed up. Meanwhile, Dale kept working. The Massey Ferguson started at 5:30 a.m. every morning. No glow plug issues, no limp mode, no DEF problems. By November 18th, Dale had finished harvest. Billy Schaefer still had 340 acres left. Jim Hartman had 290. Carl Benson had 410, and all 3 of them were dealing with equipment that kept breaking down. The frustration in the county became palpable. These weren't old tractors. These were machines that cost $280,000 to $340,000 new, machines with full dealer support, machines that were supposed to be the best iron in the field, and they were spending more time in the shop than working. Dale didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The results spoke for themselves. On November 21st, Dale was at the co-op picking up hydraulic oil when Billy Schaefer walked in. He looked tired, frustrated. He saw Dale and stopped. For a second, it looked like he might just walk past. but he didn't. "Your Massey give you any trouble this harvest?" Dale shook his head. "Not once." Billy nodded slowly. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but couldn't quite get it out. Finally, he just said it. "I should have bought that tractor instead of you." Dale didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just said, "It was sitting right there. Nobody else wanted it." Billy shook his head. "Because it was a Massey, and we're all too damn proud to admit that the brand doesn't matter as much as the engineering." He walked out. That conversation spread fast. Because Billy Schaefer wasn't just some small operator. He was one of the biggest farmers in the county. And if Billy Schaefer was admitting he made a mistake, people listened. By December, 3 farmers in Randolph County called the auction house asking if there were any more Massey Ferguson 8690s available. There weren't, but the Massey Ferguson dealer 2 counties over started getting calls. "You got any used 8690s on the lot? What about 8680s? I'm looking for a Massey with a Dyna VT. What have you got?" The dealer, an older guy named Frank Russell who'd been selling Massey Ferguson for 30 years, couldn't believe it. He called Dale in January. "I don't know what you did, but I've had 8 guys call me in the last month asking about Massey Ferguson high horsepower tractors. Half of them mentioned your name." Dale laughed. "I didn't do anything. I just didn't break down." Frank laughed too. In this business, that's everything. By February 2021, the used Massey Ferguson market in southern Illinois had completely shifted. Tractors that used to sit on dealer lots for months were selling in days. Prices started climbing. A 2011 Massey Ferguson 8660 that would have sold for $70,000 in 2019 sold for $96,000 in February 2021. The same tractors that nobody wanted a year ago were suddenly in demand, and it all traced back to one harvest season. One farmer, one Massey Ferguson that didn't break. But the story didn't end there. In March 2021, the local Case IH dealer held their annual spring equipment show. It was a big event. New iron on display, factory reps, free lunch, prize drawings. Dale didn't usually go. He'd spent 40 years buying Case IH, and after switching to Massey Ferguson, he figured showing up would just invite more comments. But Billy Schaefer called him personally. "You should come to the Case IH show." Dale was surprised. "Why?" "Because people need to hear your side of it." Dale thought about it. "I don't have a side. I just bought a tractor." "Exactly, and it worked. That's the whole point." Dale showed up. When he walked onto the dealer lot, heads turned. Not in a hostile way, more curious. People wanted to see the guy who'd made the Massey Ferguson purchase that everyone had mocked, and then made them all look foolish for mocking it. Dale walked around, looked at the new Magnum 400s on display, talked to a few people. Then Doug Peterson, the Case IH sales manager, came over. "Dale, glad you came." Dale nodded. "Didn't think I'd be welcome." Doug smiled. "You're always welcome, even if you're running red equipment that's not ours." He paused. "Can I ask you something honestly?" "Sure. If you were buying today, would you buy Case IH or Massey Ferguson?" Dale didn't hesitate. "Massey Ferguson." Doug nodded. He didn't look offended, just thoughtful. Because of the price? Because of the engineering. The price just made the decision easier. Doug looked around at the shiny new Magnum tractors on the lot. Machines that cost $320,000 to $380,000. "Our stuff's gotten expensive," Dale nodded. "It has, and I'm not saying it's not good, but when a 10-year-old Massey Ferguson outworks a 3-year-old Case IH at half the cost, people start asking questions." Doug respected that. Fair enough. They shook hands. But the conversation stuck with Doug, because he knew Dale was right. Case IH had been building their brand on legacy and loyalty, but legacy doesn't mean much when the competition is outperforming you in the field. By the end of the spring show, Doug had a dozen farmers ask him why their Case IH tractors were having so many issues. He didn't have a good answer. April came, planting season started, and Dale pulled the Massey Ferguson 8690 back into the field with a 16-row planter. The tractor performed just like it had during harvest. Smooth, efficient, reliable. But this time, people were watching differently. Not with judgment, with interest. Farmers started stopping by Dale's farm, not to mock, to ask questions. "How's that Dyna VT transmission working for you?" You notice any difference in fuel consumption compared to your old case? What's the maintenance like? Dale answered every question honestly. Transmission's the smoothest I've ever run. Fuel consumption's about 11% better than my old MX285. Maintenance is straightforward. Filters and fluids, same as anything else. One guy, Tom Briggs, who farmed 2,400 acres and ran 2 Case IH Magnum 310s, asked the question everyone was thinking. If I wanted to buy one, where would I look? Dale told him. Start with the Massey Ferguson dealer in Marion, Frank Russell. Tell him I sent you. Tom went. And 3 weeks later, he bought a 2013 Massey Ferguson 8670. Then another farmer bought a 8680. Then another bought a 8690, just like Dale's. By June 2021, 6 farmers in Randolph County had switched from Case IH to Massey Ferguson, and every single one of them cited the same reason. Dale Hutchins ran that Massey through a whole season without a breakdown. I can't say the same about my case. The shift was quiet but undeniable. Case IH still dominated the county, but the monopoly was broken, and it started with one farmer who bought a tractor nobody else wanted. In July, Dale got a call from a farming magazine. They'd heard about the Massey Ferguson trend in Randolph County and wanted to do a feature story. Dale declined. I'm not looking for attention. I just bought a tractor that worked. The reporter pressed, but you started a trend. That's worth talking about. Dale thought about it. The trend started because Case IH owners got tired of expensive breakdowns. I just showed them there was an alternative. The reporter asked one more question. Do you regret switching? Dale answered immediately. Not for a second. By the end of 2021, the Massey Ferguson 8690 had logged 1,847 hours. Total maintenance costs, $2,340. Total breakdowns, 0. Billy Schaffer's Case IH Magnum 340 had logged 1,653 hours. Maintenance costs, $18,900, 4. The ROI wasn't even close. In January 2022, Dale did something nobody expected. He bought another Massey Ferguson, a 2014 model 8650, another Dyna VT tractor, another auction purchase. This time, he paid $102,000. Still a deal, but not as dramatic as the first one. When people asked why he bought a second Massey, Dale's answer was simple. Because the first one worked. That's the standard now. Not brand loyalty, not dealer relationships, not legacy. Performance. And the Massey Ferguson 8690 had set a new standard in Randolph County. By spring 2022, the local Case IH dealer had lost 11 customers to Massey Ferguson. Doug Peterson knew exactly why. Emissions issues, DEF problems, transmission failures, overheating, downtime. The new Case IH tractors were packed with technology that was supposed to make them better, but it made them fragile, and farmers don't have patience for fragile. Meanwhile, the older Massey Ferguson tractors, built before the most restrictive emission standards, just kept working. Simple, reliable, efficient. The kind of iron that doesn't surprise you. In May 2022, Doug made a decision. He called Dale. I want to buy your Massey Ferguson. Dale was surprised. Why? Because I want to put it on my lot. I want people to see what they're comparing us to. Dale appreciated the honesty. It's not for sale. Doug laughed. Figured you'd say that. He paused. But if you ever want to sell, call me first. Dale said he would, but he had no plans to sell, because the Massey Ferguson 8690 wasn't just a tractor anymore. It was proof. Proof that brand loyalty doesn't matter if the product doesn't perform. Proof that the underdog can outwork the favorite. Proof that sometimes the best decision is the one everyone else is too proud to make. Today, if you drive through Randolph County, you'll see something that didn't exist 3 years ago. Red Massey Ferguson tractors working alongside red Case IH tractors. Not everywhere, but enough to notice. And if you ask the guys running those Massey Fergusons why they switched, they'll all tell you the same story. I watched Dale Hutchins run that 8690 for 2 years without a single breakdown. I couldn't say the same about my case, so I made a change. That's the legacy now, not the brand you bought, but whether it worked when it mattered. Dale still farms his 1,800 acres, still runs his 2 Massey Ferguson tractors, still shows up at the co-op and the grain elevator. But now, when people see him, the comments are different. How's that Massey running? You still happy with it? Think I should look at one? And Dale's answer is always the same. It works. That's all that matters. Because in farming, performance isn't subjective. It's measurable. Hours logged, fuel burned, downtime recorded, and by every measurable standard, the Massey Ferguson 8690 that everyone laughed at outperformed every Case IH tractor that was supposed to be better. The joke became the standard. The outcast became the blueprint. And the tractor nobody wanted became the one everyone wished they'd bought. That's not luck. That's just what happens when you stop buying a brand and start buying a machine.